Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about the true ROI from email marketing. And I wanted to start off with a little stat that I spotted last week. The DMA did a really interesting piece of research. They asked lots of marketers things around their marketing mix and budget allocation. So they were just trying to get a feel for where people were investing money, what channels were working, what channels weren't working, and what the sort of future held for these marketers. And there's some really interesting stats that came out of it. First of all, 89% of all of the people surveyed said that email was either important or very important on their list of marketing channels, which is fantastic. Email is a great channel, and we'll come on to talk a little bit about that. But the other side of things, which is a little bit of a mismatch really with that data, is that 35% of that audience that were questioned couldn't measure the ROI from their emails. And for me, that seems crazy. Email is one of the most measurable channels, almost down to a person-to-person level. So it seems crazy that you can't tie that to an ROI.
So fortunately, we know exactly how much money we make from emails. That's £19 for every pound spent. And what a difference that makes to the way that we manage our channel mix. Today we're going to talk to you about how we do that and hopefully how that can make a difference for you guys as well.
Cool, and to do that we're going to talk you through a bit of a case study, so some work that we've done with Wiltshire Farm Foods. So we're going to start off talking about the challenge, and that kind of comes from both points of view, and we'll talk a little bit more about who we are in a sec, but from the agency side and from the client side as well. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've done in terms of data to help us improve our email marketing, and then some of the results from that, and hopefully how you guys can go and apply that to your marketing as well.
Okay, so good afternoon, I'm Talia, I'm from Wiltshire Farm Foods and I'm the client. We deliver a range of frozen ready meals to the elderly and vulnerable, so people who can't necessarily get out and about to do their own shopping. And one of the key challenges I have in my role as digital marketing manager is that my core audience has an average age of 83, so not your typical online consumer. And surprisingly, within that mix, 60% of our consumers are placing orders for themselves. 40% are their friends, family, carers, other people. But there's 60% of our 83-year-olds who are actively engaging in this space. So it's really important for me in my role to make sure that we're providing them with a really relevant and interesting experience online, and that's easy for them to engage with us and ultimately to shop.
And hello from me, I'm Darren. I head up strategy at Coast Digital. We're a full-service digital marketing agency. I've been with Coast for 6.5 years or so, so I've got a really kind of broad range of experience, works pretty much in every area of the business now. But we've been working with Wiltshire Farm Foods for the best part of that time, so around 6 years. The first email we sent for Wiltshire Farm Foods was back in July 2007, so we've had a huge amount of experience with it. Sent lots of different emails, understood the audience. As Talia was saying, they're not your standard audience, so it's really good that we've had such a good experience in terms of learnings from that, and we'll talk a bit about that in a sec. But kind of the key challenge for us in terms of email marketing, and with a lot of the stuff that we do for clients in general, is that clients are really demanding of us. So they're always saying do more with their marketing budgets. So for us, we have to meet that demand, and what we've done here, and this case study we're going to talk through, is kind of just one of the ways that we've been able to do that with Wiltshire Farm Foods.
Okay, so as Darren says, email's been part of our channel mix for quite some time. We do all the usual stuff as well, so pay-per-click, display, affiliate, some quite interesting things with YouTube, and again, surprisingly, social media is starting to be really impactful with our consumer base. But email is a really core channel for us, and it works as hard, only second best pay-per-click in terms of delivering return for us. But as Darren said, I'm quite a challenging client, and I'm constantly challenging them to make the best use of my budget. So we're constantly working together to make sure that we learn from the activity that we've been doing, and so that I have the right channel mix and can justify that spend back to my business and the role that I play. So it's really important that we understand what is working hard and where the budget should be spent.
Sure, and as part of that process, with any email that we send, especially for Wiltshire Farm Foods, so we're tracking all of that. So we're understanding what emails are going out, we're understanding the subject lines, which ones are working best, which links are getting the best responses, which call to actions are working best for us. So we're analysing each individual email, at an email level, and from that, I suppose, from that perspective, we always do sort of like a monthly report with all of the emails that we've sent over the month, breaking it down in terms of the content that was in the email, how they've worked, the responses we've had from those emails. So it's really great for us to be able to provide that kind of information back to the client. But off the back of that, Nikki, who is our email marketing specialist that does all of the work for Wiltshire Farm Foods on email, noticed one of the times she was filling out that report that as she went back to old emails, the revenue numbers that we'd reported had actually grown. And my first reaction to that was, well, it must be sort of cookie length. So we use Google Analytics to track everything, and that runs on a 30-day cookie window. So if someone clicks on an email link and then comes through to the website, if they come back within 30 days, directly to the website, Google Analytics can kind of tie those things up and report that back as email revenue. But actually what we found when we looked into it was that people were actually coming back to old emails, clicking on them and then reordering again. And this was really unusual behaviour, something that we'd not seen perhaps on other clients. So what we wanted to do was try and find a way that we could explore that a bit more, try and find some data that would help us understand what that was, why it was happening, and then how we might be able to learn something from that. So we came up with this. It doesn't look particularly pretty, I'll give you that, but it's really simple. Really all we've done is we've started lining up all of our email marketing, so just emails down and then weeks across. So we're just trying to understand what's happening over time with our email sends. So essentially we're tracking revenue from the day one when we send it, each week, to kind of understand what the incremental revenue that's coming through is and how big that is. And then obviously with that we can start to tie that back to the types of content that we've sent out. So we can start trying to understand what pieces of content are most valuable and which aren't. But the key bit with this is it's really simple. We're not doing anything really complicated here. Just using basic Google Analytics data, pulling out revenue and mapping it in a big spreadsheet.
So if it's that simple, why aren't I doing it myself? It's using Google Analytics, but as a client with limited internal resource, it's not the best use of my time to be spending all day in Google Analytics looking at numbers. So I need someone like Coast as an agency to really draw the insights out of that and kind of work with them so that we're coming back to a plan for the future and really understanding what activity has worked in the past and how we can make that relevant for our audience moving forward.
Oh, and it's worth pointing out at this stage as well that we, as I said earlier, we track everything in Google Analytics. And if you don't already track your email marketing in Google Analytics, and a lot of people that we speak to don't, it's really simple to do. All you have to do is add a small tag on the end of each of your URLs that you send out in your email. If you're not sure how to do that, it's not particularly difficult, but we don't really have time to cover it today. So feel free to come and see me at the stand afterwards, and I'll show you how to do it. Right, so really this next bit is about what we've kind of started to do with the data. So we've been running this report for a long time, and we've got a huge amount of data in it now. And the bit that adds the value here is when we start kind of applying patterns to this data and trying to understand what it means to us. So what can we do with all this data, this massive spreadsheet that we've got? We started to try and map some of the data onto charts to see what it told us. This chart tells us that there's a steep growth at the beginning, and then it kind of peters out towards the end. That's not really much use to us. So what we wanted to try and do is kind of shorten this down and just try and understand a little bit more about the initial reaction to an email. So what we did was we looked at the first 4 weeks, and we try and map each email that we do as closely as we can over the first 4 weeks. And this actually allowed us to see some really interesting stuff, and this is where we started to get some value from this. So over the first week, what we find now, and we've done this with so many emails that we've got a really accurate average, but what we find in week 1 is that once we send an email out, we get 41% of that email's total worth in that first week, which is great for us because, one, we've got some revenue in the first week, which is fantastic, but what it also means is we've still got 60% of that email's total worth to come, which, I mean, from a marketing point of view is a dream, really, because we know that we've got more revenue to come without us having to do any more work. What we also learned is that by week 4, we've got 80% of that email's total worth. Now, that again is really useful because by that point we've got the bulk of it, so we know there or thereabouts how the overall total success of that email is going to end up. But we also know that we've still got 20% more revenue to come from that email, which is great. Again, we're talking 4 weeks here, so we're talking essentially a month. So what we're saying is that we've still got 20% of the revenue from that email still to come, essentially in the next month. So for us, as an agency, we've got monthly revenue targets. This is fantastic, because essentially what it means for us is that we're doing work for months ahead working towards that target without us actually having to do anything in that month. So it means hitting those targets are a bit easier for us, and obviously we can make Talia look really successful. So it works really well.
And from my perspective, having this kind of data is really valuable, because I know straight away from week 1 into that email whether we're on track to meet budget, and if we're not on track, what other activity I need to dial up in the whole channel mix to make sure that we are actually meeting that target. And we've sent over 80 emails over 130 weeks. So as Darren said previously, we've got so much data behind this now. We can be really confident in these numbers being robust. So, importantly, I talked earlier about the customer being slightly unusual, and at the heart of Wiltshire Farm Foods, we talk about often that the customer is at the heart of everything we do. So it's up to me to kind of make sure that we're providing a really outstanding experience for our consumers online. So I run an e-commerce website, but it's not just about the product offering. We know that our customers are quite unique, and they love things like a puzzle and a crossword and a survey and a quiz. So we've got a real plethora of things that we can engage with them, not just about products. So for me, it's about finding a moment of delight in a day for them where they might not have anything else to do. Our drivers are potentially the only people that they might see in a week. So this email program, it provides them with a touch point that actually really helps them to engage with us as a brand and gives them something to look forward to. They use this as a point of feedback as well. I had an email from a customer called Margaret from Wolverhampton last week, who responded to one of our emails and said, just wanted to say I love your roast pork with apricot stuffing, and I'm really looking forward to Bob the driver coming again next week with my next delivery. And we know that she doesn't have many other people that are engaging with her, so for her to feel confident and be able to engage back with us in a digital format is something that certainly makes me get up in the morning. So having that content that's right and easy and engaging is something that's really cool, both from our customer point of view, but going back to the figures from an ROI point of view as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, the stuff that we send out that is kind of more along this customer experience sort of thread really does still have an impact from a revenue point of view as well. So even when it comes down to forecasting out success of these emails, there's no direct calls to action in them. We're not prompting anyone to buy a product or talking about anything salesy at all, but we're still getting revenue off the back of them. And as Talia said, providing that experience helps them engage with us, even perhaps when they're not thinking about ordering, or placing their next order, which means, we're always front of mind, which is absolutely fantastic. So that kind of takes me on to content. And this is where we've found the real value in this big report, and again the reason why ROI from email marketing is so important. So I've got a few examples here, and I'll just quickly talk about each one and give you a bit of background as to what we did and why and all of that. So the first one here on the left-hand side is one that we sent out in July last year. There was a bit of content in there about St Swithin's Day, which has some folklore around it, sort of like an old wives' tale about weather. So if it rains on St Swithin's Day, it's going to rain for months afterwards, that kind of thing. And that kind of content, we know from experience, has a really good response rate from this audience. They like that kind of thing. So we try and include little quirky stories and things like that where we can. But this email, the main focus of this email was a competition that we'd run. So in the email before, we prompted users to send in their suggestions for a meal pack. So a meal pack is something that we do on a regular basis. So it's just essentially a selection of meals that can be ordered all in one go. So it's like you buy a week's worth of food in one go, for example. And we got the customers to submit their own menu packs, and this one essentially was announcing the winner of that competition. What we found from that was this this email actually came in at 34% above where we'd forecast it to in terms of revenue. Which, again, when the main message is around a competition winner, is not necessarily something that you'd expect. But what we found with this is, as Talia said, you know, this audience are really, really switched on to anything that can engage them. So they're dead keen on the competition. We had tons and tons of entries. So actually announcing the winner was enough to get people to go in and buy that menu pack. So it's a really nice thing for people to do. And obviously we saw the financial benefits of that too. The next email is an interesting one. Now this is something that we've had experience with before as well. So essentially it was a recommend a friend email. So what we wanted to try and do was kind of replicate the experience that perhaps some of this target audience have, perhaps when they're in assisted living and that kind of thing, where they're recommending good services and products to people. So I know from real life, my granddad, he's 89, he lives in sort of an assisted living home, and he's just got a new hearing aid, and I know that he's recommended it to about 9 people in that home already, and he's only had it for a week because he absolutely loves it. And it's that kind of experience is something that we wanted to replicate online. So what we tried to do in the past is just try this out in regular emails and that kind of thing, and we didn't have much success with it before. So what we thought was, well, we know the competitions work really well, and we know they like quizzes and that kind of thing. So why don't we try tying the recommend a friend promotion in with a famous friends quiz? And it seemed like a really sensible idea. We sent it out. We had tons and tons of responses to the quiz, which is great, and we had 2 recommend a friends. Right, so that's not so great. And actually, as well, we're down on where we thought the email would be. So in terms of the forecast, we're 30% down. So that's not fantastic, and it's not a success story. But the point is, you can't win every time. And when you're testing things, when you're trying new content, don't be put off if it doesn't work. The important thing is that you make a life lesson of it, take something from it, understand why it didn't work, or at least make a note of the kind of content that went out with it, and then try and take that forward and apply it to emails that you're creating in the future. It's really important that you do that. And don't be upset if every email that you send doesn't quite work as well as you might hope.
Okay, and the third email we've got up here was we'd undertaken some user research to make sure that the site was really optimised and was providing a really seamless user experience. And we'd made quite a few changes to the site. Nobody likes change, particularly in this audience, very much so. So we thought that really we should tell them that we were making changes to the site and really explain what these changes were. So this email literally says, we've done some stuff, click here to find out what we've done. There is no call to action to purchase at all, and we weren't expecting any return. I think we'd even left it off of that original spreadsheet because we just thought that it was an information email. And surprisingly, we had 43% more revenue than we were expecting. So again, reinforcing the point that as long as the content's engaging and written in a way that people want to interact with it, we don't really need to worry too much what we're talking about sometimes, because they want to engage with us and they use it as a prompt to go back to the site. And the real point on the back of this is, whilst it's interesting and it's great when things do overpromise or under-deliver, you can really learn from that. Having that forecast and that benchmark to measure your success from is absolutely vital. So if you start with the criteria to measure that success, then you can effectively manage that activity and plan your activity moving forward.
Absolutely. And I suppose really from a next steps point of view with this, as I said right back at the start, so Talia is always keen for us to do more and more with her budget. So we're always looking for ways that we can expand what we're doing, and it's the same with this report. There's a couple of things that we're looking to kind of bring into this now. So from a data perspective, Wiltshire Farm Foods and us really, we're fairly data poor from a digital perspective. We don't have a huge amount of data on our target audience. The people we're emailing, we just kind of have an email address and where they are, so we don't have too much to work with. And we also we can't necessarily track them between on and offline very well at the moment. Which is a bit of a shame, and actually we could do some really clever stuff if we had that data. But at the same time, I'm a big believer in, excuse the cliche, but if life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? So we haven't got huge amounts of data, but the data we've put into something that's really powerful and really useful for us, and that's the really important thing to do. So if you are stuck for data, take a step back, understand exactly what you've got, and then try and work out a way that you can put that into something that's going to be useful for you in the future. I think it's well worth just trying to understand that and see where you can gain benefits from your data. The other big thing with this is kind of the rise of mobile and tablets. Now, obviously, the target audience is, as we know, an unusual one. But that doesn't seem to have stopped or slowed the growth in mobile. So Talia was saying to me earlier on that we've seen a 300% increase in tablet visits to the site over the last year, right, which is really significant. But it's interesting to try and think about how that audience might be using tablets. Obviously, 83-year-olds or older in some cases, probably can use tablets quite easily. They're fairly high-resolution screens. They're fairly simple to use. It wouldn't surprise me if that audience was pretty, heavy on tablets. At the same time, we've got this influencer audience, so sons and daughters and that kind of thing, who are perhaps 50. They're probably going to be quite used to having a smartphone or a BlackBerry or something like that, and are likely to be able to read email on their mobile and engage with that there. So from our perspective, the next step with this is to try and learn a bit more about that and learn about how the different content types that we're sending out are reacting on the different devices. So in future, we're going to start splitting out email or email revenue by desktop, mobile, tablet, so that we can start building that picture as well. So again, future, it's likely we're going to be forecasting out the kind of revenue that we want to see from tablets, from desktops and so on, so that we can then start judging each individual segment of that on success as well. And that means we can optimize the content for those individual platforms, which means that we're going to get better results in the long term, which is fantastic. And then lastly, personalization is kind of a next step for this too. As I said, we're fairly data poor in terms of digital stuff. But what we're trying to do is all the time we're trying to find ways to get more data out of users, especially we're working on the site. We're trying to work out how we can get more data out of users. We have got some data around meal choices, so similar to the Amazon model. If you bought this, you might like this. So we've got some data like that, and we're trying to use that in our marketing a little bit more as well. And obviously, as we do that, we're keeping an eye on forecasts, understanding whether they work or not. And then making sure that we take learnings from that. So if it works really well, we're probably going to want to do more of it. But it helps Talia make a good business case internally. If things are coming in really high over the forecasts, then it's a really good sign for us to try and gain more investment in personalization of email, because obviously the results are fantastic. So it's a really good tool and for buying as well.